Welcome to the Trueness Podcast, where we encourage women to be true to God and true to who He created them to be. This is a space for faith, purpose, and honest growth. I'm Rhonda, and I'm glad you're here. So, today I want to share a phrase that has stayed with me for years. G.W.I.A.D. God writes it all down. The first time I saw those letters was in a text message from a friend. She simply texted me GWIAD. I remember looking at my phone and thinking, what in the world does that mean? So I asked her, and she replied, God writes it all down. She told me that she had heard an assistant pastor that we both knew use that phrase often, and it stuck with her. Eventually, it became something she would say whenever someone felt overlooked, discouraged, or forgotten. Over the years, I've thought about that phrase many times, and the more I've studied scripture, the more I've realized just how biblical it really is. Our main scripture today is found in Malachi chapter 3, verse 16. Then they that feared the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it. And a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Lord and that thought upon his name. So think about that for a moment. The Lord listened, the Lord heard, and a book of remembrance was written. God thought it was important enough to remember, and that's incredible. Sometimes we feel like nobody notices, nobody sees the sacrifices, nobody sees the prayers, nobody sees the tears, nobody sees the hours spent serving, nobody sees the quiet acts of obedience. But God does. And according to scripture, He remembers. I think one of the greatest struggles we face is feeling forgotten. Maybe you've worked hard in ministry and received little recognition. Maybe you've encouraged people who never thanked you. Maybe you prayed for years about a situation and wondered if God ever heard you. Maybe you've done the right thing when no one was watching. Here's what I want to encourage you with today. God sees what others miss. God hears what others ignore. And God remembers what others forget. Psalm 56:8 says, Thou tellest my wanderings, but put thou my tears into thy bottle. Are they not in thy book? And I love that verse. It tells us that God notices every tear, not just the tears people see, the tears that we cry in private, the tears shed in prayer, the tears that fall when your heart is breaking. God doesn't overlook them. They're important to Him. And imagine that. The God of heaven cares enough to keep record of the things that matter to His children. Hebrews 6:10 says, For God is not unrighteous to forget your work and labor of love. People may forget, but God doesn't. People may overlook your faithfulness, but God does not. People may never know the sacrifices you've made, but God does. Every Bible study taught, every song sung for God's glory, every meal prepared, every ride you gave, every prayer prayed, every encouraging word spoken, every act of kindness. Nothing done for God is ever wasted, and nothing done in obedience is ever forgotten. That's why we don't serve for applause. We don't serve for recognition. We don't serve so our names can be mentioned. We serve because we love God. And when nobody else notices, God does. I think that's what makes GWIAD so powerful. God writes it all down. Not because He's looking for reasons to condemn us, but because He values what matters to Him. He remembers faithfulness. He remembers love. He remembers obedience. He remembers sacrifice. He remembers every time you chose to keep going when nobody else knew how hard it was. So if you've been feeling unseen lately, let this encourage you because God sees, God hears, God remembers, and God writes it all down. One day, all the things that seemed unnoticed on earth will be fully known by the one who never misses a single detail. And thank you for joining me today. The next time you feel forgotten, remember four simple letters: G.W.I.A.D. God writes it all down. And until next time, keep serving, keep trusting, keep remembering that your faithfulness is never overlooked by God. And remember, be true to God and be true to yourself.